Good afternoon. Today we'll be speaking about cerebral palsy. So, cerebral palsy is a very important topic in terms of your pediatrics as well as for your exam point of view, which comes as a main question, a 10-mark question. Cerebral palsy it's a neurological disorder which is caused by non-progressive brain injury or malformation occurs when the child's brain is under development. So it's basically a disorder of a developing brain. So a disorder of a developing brain means it exclusively occurs in children or in the neonatal period during the development of the brain. Cerebral palsy it primarily affects body movement and muscle coordination. So basically it majorly affects the motor part. It's not that it doesn't affect the sensory part, but most of the effect is due to motor part. It can be defined as a disorder due to non-progressive damage to a developing brain, which leads to a motor abnormality. You may come across many children. So during your course of your practice, you'll come across many children who are affected with cerebral palsy. The incidence has been increasing. One of the reasons being more preterm births, more in vitro fertilization, and the survival of these preterm babies or the babies who've had some insult in the perinatal period is more. So as the survival becomes more, the babies who might be affected with even a little bit of hypoxia are going to land up in cerebral palsy. So the incidence has been increasing now. So we may get to see more children with more cerebral palsy. And even though it occurs at the newborn period or at the infancy, the problem persists for life, because the damage that occurs to the brain parenchyma, it is irreversible. It's an irreversible injury. So most probably they'll usually be inflicted for the rest of their life. So that is the reason why the neonatal resuscitation program, the delivery of a baby, is being given so much importance, because the 5 minutes or 10 minutes which you're going to spend at in taking care of the baby to see that the baby is born well, there is no hypoxic injury to the brain, is going to help the child throughout its life. Because any negligence or any problem that occurs at that point is going to damage the child for the rest of its life. So that is the importance of taking care of a newborn at the time of delivery, why it is so important. So who described the cerebral palsy first? So it is actually first described by an orthopedician. His name was Sir William John Little. So he was an orthopedic surgeon. He noticed that because at that time no one knew why these kids were having some bone abnormality or some muscle abnormality or this spasticity, why these kids were having so many problems. So whenever any problem with the bone or with the muscle problem, they usually go for orthopedics, right? So he observed these children with tone and some developmental abnormalities, and when he traced back, he noticed that most of the babies had some problem during the delivery. So it might be prematurity, it might have been a breech delivery, it might have been a difficult delivery or a prolonged delivery. So he was the one who described this entity. So for many decades, this entity was known as Little disease. So named after him, William John Little. So it is known as Little's disease. So as you know, the damage to the brain means the damage to the motor system. So motor system is comprised of many parts, right? So it's comprised of your pyramidal tracts, extrapyramidal tracts, cerebellum. So the whole process of initiating a movement, executing a movement, and the coordination of movements. So all these things are dependent on your pyramidal tracts, your extrapyramidal tracts, and your cerebellum. So all this spinothalamic tract, all these things, and your internal capsule, basal ganglia, all these things will help in executing a movement smoothly with coordination. So most of the time as the injury occurs, it's a developing brain, so sensory parts are not so much developed, because as you know, as the child is growing, only then the myelination occurs. So that's about the sensory part, but the damage is occurred at the time of birth, right? So it is mostly the motor system which is majorly affected. So they give rise to various disorders, right? So it can be some movement disorders, it can be some convulsions, they not be able to execute a movement properly, there might be nystagmus, so all the tone may be abnormal. So mostly motor system is majorly affected, but not exclusively, because they can also be having various associated disorders like mental subnormality, hearing disorder, language, visual impairments. So all these things can be there. Come to the definition. So it's a static non-progressive disorder of the CNS. It's a static non-progressive disorder of the central nervous system, which is secondary to an insult to immature brain, or secondary to the insult for a developing brain, resulting in various degree of motor milestone delay and dysfunction. It results in paralysis, weakness, incoordination, or abnormal movements. So basically, cerebral palsy is a disorder of tone, posture, and movement. So cerebral palsy is a disorder of tone, posture, and movement. So what are the precipitating factors, or what is the etiology of causing this cerebral palsy? First thing is, you should know that a newborn is affected. So what all can be the causes? When all can the insult occur? So first is, as you know, antenatal period or prenatal period. So what all can occur in the prenatal period? So it can be torch infections, toxoplasmosis, rubella, cytomegalovirus, herpes. It can be some obstetrical complications like eclampsia, abruptio placenta, any drug abuse during the time of pregnancy, chorioamnionitis. So these things can occur during the antenatal or prenatal period. The second thing is natal period or at the time of delivery. It can be a low birth weight baby or a preterm baby, or any problem that has occurred during the delivery, like baby which is not cried immediately after birth, which we call it as asphyxia, perinatal asphyxia, asphyxia around the time of delivery. So that is the reason you would have heard, no, the obstetricians hurrying, like the baby is having fetal distress, we have to deliver soon, we have to deliver soon. So whenever there is bradycardia of the baby, when the heart rates of the baby, they are not able to hear properly, when the fetal movements are decreasing, so that is the time when the baby is not getting enough oxygen, enough nutrients, or the baby is suffering some insult. So after the baby is born, if the baby is not cried immediately after birth, you have to immediately attempt the resuscitative measures. So first you'll rub the baby, then you'll start the baby on oxygen, give bag and mask ventilation if there is no contraindications. So these are the things which you'll be doing. So any baby which has had major insult, like Apgar score 6 and above is okay, So any Apgar score which is less than 6 at 10th minute, the baby would be having major hypoxic ischemic damage to the brain. So that is during the perinatal period. So the next is at the time postnatal period. During the postnatal period, how can a baby be affected? So because of some infections, it can be septicemia. Not all septicemias, but baby which are having meningitis, encephalitis, any baby which has got severe uncontrolled seizures, hypoxia, hypoglycemia, so any vascular malformations. So while taking history, we always ask, was the baby put on ventilator? Even severe jaundice, because that is the reason we usually are so much after treating severe hyperbilirubinemia. If there is severe hyperbilirubinemia, we want to treat it as soon as possible, for the reason that this bilirubin gets deposited in your basal ganglia, so which causes kernicterus. So once this happens, again the baby will be having brain damage and it may lead to cerebral palsy. So these are the important things, important insults that can occur at different stages of childbirth, which can affect the baby and lead to cerebral palsy. So how do you evaluate such a child? So main thing is, how do you take a history in such children? So while evaluation of such a child, so first and the foremost thing which you will have to do is take a detailed birth history right from the beginning. So when I tell right from the beginning, it doesn't mean how was the baby born. So it starts from right from the inception. So was it a spontaneous conception? Excuse me. Was it a spontaneous conception, or was it assisted conception? Assisted conception means, was it an in vitro fertilization, or some treatment was taken for infertility? Was it a preterm birth, or was the mother having any history of fever with rash? Basically, you want to ask for any torch infections, any history of HIV, any history of seizures during pregnancy, any medications during pregnancy. How was the baby born? Hospital delivery or home delivery? Was the baby put on ventilator for a long time? Did the baby require any resuscitative measures? So most of the times you will get this as a documentation. The parents might not be knowing that. What you can ask the parents is, was the baby given to you immediately after birth, or was the baby kept in NICU for some maybe observation, or was the baby kept on machine? So when you ask machine, you're implying ventilator care. Was feed started? When did you first feed your child? So these are the things which you'll have to ask in the birth history. Next thing which you have to ask is detailed developmental milestones. So right from your gross motor, fine motor, social, language, everything in detail. Was there any milestone delay? So usually by 1.5-2 years, the baby will be starting using a particular hand, what we call it as handedness. But if you notice that before that age, say a 6-month-old baby or 1-year-old baby is using only one hand most of the times. So it's called as preferential use of one hand or leg. So you should not think that, okay, this baby is a right-handed or left-handed one. The milestone itself appears by 1.5-2 years. So if the baby is using one particular hand or one particular leg by 6 months or 8 months of age, that means there is some problem with the other hand or the leg. So it can be a hemiparesis, it can be hemiplegia. So you have to pick these things up very soon. So these are the few important things which the parents notice, or sometimes they might discount it for, okay, my baby is a right-handed baby, my baby is a left-handed baby. But it's your job to ask a detailed history, earlier development of preferential use of one hand or leg. Or if the parents might themselves tell, when I hold my baby, I feel the baby is, when I try to bathe my child, when I try to clothe my child, I feel that the hands and legs are a little tight, so the tone is increased, right? So the tone is increased. Or they might even tell, my first child was able to stand or sit at the age of around 6 months. He was able to stand at the age of around 8 to 9 months. But this child, even after 1.5 years, is not sitting, he's not standing. Again, milestones delayed. So here, most of the times, the milestones will not regress. When I tell regression of milestones, it means that a milestone is developed, but the baby has lost the milestones. So that's a totally different entity. Okay. But here it doesn't happen in cerebral palsy, because cerebral palsy, as the definition tells, it's a non-progressive one. An insult has occurred. After that, the baby might not develop some milestones, or there may be some delay in development of milestones. So it's a static. The static doesn't mean the baby is just like that, nothing changes. It means an insult has occurred, but the insult itself will not progress. Say, for example, take your meningitis or tubercular meningitis, a tuberculoma. So it can increase in size, or it can cause some other complications in the brain. So that's a progressive one. Here, an insult has occurred, it's caused some damage. At that point of time, it has caused some damage, and that insult is not progressing. But because of that insult, there are many things which the baby has to develop which is not getting developed. So that is the meaning of non-progressive in the definition, right? So apart from this, they can even tell the baby is not feeding well. He's having repeated aspirations. The baby is not developed head control. The baby is even 6 months, but there is no head control. The baby is having strabismus. So these are the things that the parents might tell, the observant parents, or else you have to ask each and every history in detail. So there are few things which you'll have to recognize as early as possible. So if at all the parents have noticed some fidgety movements, some abnormal movements, so this the parents can tell only if they have had a previous child which is normal, or if they have handled this their sister's kids, their brother's kids or someone, they'll be very keen and observant on these movements. So if they've noticed some unusual fidgety movements, any abnormal movements, any asymmetry or paucity of movements, this we have just discussed, preferential hand usage or preferential leg usage, so asymmetry of movements, any abnormalities of tone, if they notice that the tone is very much, or if they tell, if I hold my baby, I feel he's too loose, right? So that is hypotonia. So abnormal movements can also mean development of late head control, delayed rolling, delayed crawling, any feeding difficulties. So one of the common things which you can notice in all these things is the presentation of cerebral palsy. In the presentation of cerebral palsy, there is early motor features. So motor features will be noticed early rather than the sensory features or other features. The motor features are very much evident and are noted very early in the development. So next thing which you'll have to notice is early signs. So what are the early signs? So the mother will complain that my baby is very stiff. While putting diaper, I feel it very difficult to put the diaper. Or she'll tell that my baby is very floppy. So when you hold the baby upside down, the baby is having a normal tone, the back will be almost straight. He'll try to lift its leg, lift its head. But a floppy infant, if you just hold it, it'll be like an inverted U shaped without any movements. So that's a floppy infant. There'll be poor head control. And you might notice, or the parents might tell, he excessively cries. There's a high pitch cry, irritability. So one more differential for a high pitch cry is meningitis. Meningitis is another differential for high pitch cry, because in babies you don't get the classical features of meningitis like how you see in adults or older children, like neck rigidity, Koenig's sign, Brudzinski sign. So these things might not have been there. So there might be high pitched cry, photophobia. These things can be there. And the mother might also tell that while feeding, the baby is not feeding well. The suck is very weak. He keeps on thrusting the tongue out. He doesn't take the nipple well inside. He doesn't latch properly. And if he's feeding, he has repeated aspirations. He has some abnormal movement while feeding. So these are the early things which an observant parent will come to you with. So you should look for this early features. So there is a reason why cerebral palsy has to be picked up very early in life. So we'll just discuss that. So next thing, once you have taken all the history, so next important thing is the classification. So how will you classify a case of cerebral palsy? So when it comes to classification, there are different types of classification for cerebral palsy. So what are the types? One is physiological, based on the physiology of cerebral palsy. One is topographical. So topographical is nothing but what you call geographical, or based on what part is involved. Okay, that is topographical. Third classification is based on functions. Based on function, what the child can do. So based on function. So these are three types of classification which you usually do. So coming to the first one, physiologic type of classification. So this, as you can notice, there is increased tone, or what you call as spasticity. So the physiological type of classification is basically based on your tone and movement. So spasticity. So this is the most common. So there might be damage in the pyramidal system, that is a part of the motor cortex of your brain. So there is normally an amount of inhibition. So there is disinhibition of this reflex arcs. So there is unopposed increased tone in the extremities. Unopposed increased tone in the extremities. So the tone is increased. So you might be aware of different types of increased tone. Clasp knife rigidity, lead pipe rigidity, right? So that is spastic cerebral palsy. So the other one is, we'd seen previously, a floppy baby. If you try to lift the baby up, the neck lags behind. There's no head control. If you hold the baby upside down, it's like an inverted U. So abnormally decreased tone. This is described as a floppy baby or hypotonic cerebral palsy. The third one is some abnormal movements. There is increased tone, but the movement is very abnormal. So it's called as dystonic CP or dystonic cerebral palsy. Next one is Athetosis, which you might have noticed in case of in your medicine, different conditions will be having some athetosis. Athetosis is nothing but abnormal breathing movements. The patient can't control those movements, so there will be affect in the basal ganglia. So especially in case of your kernicterus, you'll notice this kind of cerebral palsy, which is called as athetotic cerebral palsy. The next one is ataxic. The gait is abnormal. So cerebellar lesions will lead to this kind of cerebral palsy. So you'll notice that the child is having an abnormal wide based clumsy gait. So that is called as ataxic cerebral palsy. So it's very important to correctly classify the movement disorders of a patient with cerebral palsy, because the results of your medical management or the surgical treatment is purely based on these kinds of patients. So you can't give some drugs which can decrease the tone, like for a spastic CP you'll be giving certain drugs to decrease the tone. You can't be giving those drugs in a case of hypotonic cerebral palsy. You'll be giving some drugs for athetotic cerebral palsy, which you can't be giving for other types of cerebral palsy. So it's very important to classify the physiologic basis of your cerebral palsy, because your treatment will depend on this. So the next type of classification is based on a topographical classification. As you can see here, it's based on the region involved. So it's only one if only one part of the body is involved, it's called as just one side of the body is involved. It is right upper limb, right lower limb. It's called as right hemiplegia. So I think you already know the difference between plegia and paresis, right? So hemiplegia, just one side of the body is involved. Diplegia. Diplegia means lower part of the body is involved. So in cerebral palsy, it is not that you hardly come across a patient where only legs are involved, upper limbs are not involved. So here, lower part, that is the legs are involved more than your upper part. So it's called as diplegia. So if all four are involved, it's called as quadriplegia. So in case if your basal ganglia, internal capsule is involved more, then you'll get your athetotic CP or dystonic CP. If your cerebellum is involved more, you'll get a ataxic CP, right? So based on which part of the brain will incur the most insult, so that decides which type of cerebral palsy the child is going to have. So the first few are basically your pyramidal tracts are involved. So you'll get a hemiplegia, diplegia, quadriplegia. The second part is the extrapyramidal tracts are involved. So that is your internal capsule, basal ganglia, all these things. Then you'll get your dyskinetic CP or dyskinetic CP, movement disorders. If your cerebellum is involved, then you'll be having your ataxic CP, right? So based on the damage which occurs, or based on which part of the body which is involved more, we'll classify it as hemiplegia, diplegia, quadriplegia, right? So if only one arm, which is very rare, so it's called as monoplegia. Hemiplegia is one part of the body is involved. Diplegia is lower part of the body is involved. So it's actually lower limbs are more involved than the upper limbs. Quadriplegia is all four limbs are involved. Coming to the third classification. The third classification is called as functional classification. So this is the classification which is more clinically important when you come to your management of the child, if you want to know in which functional classification the child is in. So current emphasis is being laid on functional classification. So functional classification, it's called as gross motor and functional classification system, also known as GMFCS. So to be brief, it has got 5 levels. First level is, which you are seeing, the child can move without any limitations. He can climb stairs, he can get downstairs, he can run, he can do everything. In the second one, he can do the works, but with some assistance. He might need some assistance, like in walking he might need some support. While climbing stairs he might need some support. That is a level 2, right? So level 3, he walks with some adaptive equipments. He requires some handheld mobility device. Okay, he's not bound to a wheelchair or something, but he needs some crutches or something to move. He requires a handheld mobility device, or even if he needs a wheelchair, with his hands he can move the wheelchair. When it comes to the grade 4, self mobility is there, but with the use of powered mobility assistance devices. Like he has a wheelchair which has got some power, either a battery assisted or some power driven one. You might have seen in most of the movies. So he'll be using a lever to move. So level 5 is severe head and trunk control limitations. If you leave, the head will fall down. He requires extensive use of assisted technology and physical assistance. Right. So second one, it includes walking for walking long distances or stairs. He'll require some assistance. The third one is while using for mobility, he'll require some adaptive equipments. Fourth is powered mobility assistance. Transport in manual, wheelchair or powered mobility. Fifth one is severe head and trunk control limitation will be there. So this is the classification. So 5 levels are there. It's called as gross motor function classification system, or GMFCS. While examining the child with cerebral palsy, you have to note few things. First thing is, you should be thorough of examining the muscle tone. So upper limbs, lower limbs, proximal muscles, distal muscles, medial and lateral group of muscles. So examination of muscle tone. Next is examination of deep tendon reflexes. In case of cerebral palsy, so because your pyramidal tracts are involved, it's a kind of UMN lesions. As you know, UMN lesions, again, your medicine basics, clinical examination. The reflexes are brisk, so 3 plus or 4 plus. There might be clonus as well. So spasticity, it feels like there is some tightness in the muscle. Okay, so when you move it passively, you will notice that some tightness is there in the muscle. And also you should examine the gait of the child. If the child is able to walk, how is the balance while sitting or standing? Is there any toe walking? Or if you lift the child, is there scissoring? The scissoring, why you notice? Because the medial side of muscles, the medial sides of thigh muscles are anatomy, adductor. Okay, there is adductor spasm. Because of adductor spasm, there is scissoring. Okay, so these are the physical examination things which you'll have to notice. So not only these, they'll also be having many other associated problems. So these associated problems are, there'll be visual difficulties. So it can be refractory error, it can be strabismus, it can be cataract, it can be cortical blindness. So these things can be there. Hearing difficulties, there can be sensorineural deafness, there can be conductive deafness. There will be feeding problem. So The mother might tell, my baby is having too much of aspirations. My baby is even though my baby is 7 or 8 years, he's not having toilet control still. So there'll be bowel and bladder incontinence. There might be mental retardation, learning disabilities. There can be seizures or any other abnormal type of movements. Behavioral, emotional difficulties, communication disorders. So apart from your motor disorders, they can be having all these other associated problems. So you have to examine the child as global entity. So everything will have to be examining. So after your physical examination, what are the evaluation which you need to do? So if you're dealing with an infant, so basically you want to know what's happening with the brain. So if a newborn, you can't take the child for MRI, because you should be aware that an MRI, the duration is at least for half an hour. CT, you should avoid doing a CT, right? CT will not give you much and will expose the baby for a lot of radiation. So you should go for a ultrasound of the brain or neurosonogram. In an elder child, you should do an MRI. If the baby is having seizures, you should do a EEG. So these are the basic workup which you'll have to do. So what you might find, so if there is any perinatal insult, there might be periventricular leukomalacia or some vascular insult, some patchy areas of necrosis in the brain parenchyma. So you've done your evaluation. So the next part of management is treatment. First and foremost thing which you'll have to tell the parents is, most important thing that is required is supportive care. Should be very clear that this can't be cured completely. But you should not tell that at the first instant, oh, your baby can't be cured. It's very discouraging. So you should tell that your baby needs a lot of support, it needs a multidisciplinary management, but you can see the changes very slowly. It is not a cure, because the brain damage that has happened during the delivery or before that, the damage can't be reversed. What you can do is see to it that no further sequelae will be happening. So the crucial goals of therapy are early identification. So you should identify a case of cerebral palsy early and intervene. Give a multidisciplinary care. It is not that give some medicines and done. So a lot of things are involved in taking care of a child with cerebral palsy. Most important thing is support for the family. Should tell them that your child needs support. He's dependent now. With your support, with your love and care, the baby can develop at least a little bit. So not like a normal child, but still can expect some development. So diagnosis of CP is determined by noticing the previous early warning sign. You should notice these warning signs as early as possible. Check the child's reflexes, motor skills, do a functional classification, do your investigations. So the earlier the therapy started, the more improvement can be expected. So what are the therapy which is required? First thing, ensure that the baby is fed well. Nutrition of the child. So already the muscles, everything, because the child is not able to feed himself. He is not able to move. So you have to take care of the nutrition of the child. So nutrition is very important. Second thing is personal care. Most of the times these kids are bedridden. They might develop some bed sores. See to that they won't develop some bed sores. See to that they don't have repeated aspirations, pneumonias. So personal care and hygiene. Apart from this, what is required is so your treatment can be defined as non-surgical treatment or physical therapy, physiotherapy. See to that you can do some therapy to decrease the tone so that this spasticity can be decreased. or if the spasticity is already developed, so give some devices so that to improve the gait, to make the child ambulatory. So if he's bedridden, someone has to take care of him. At least if he's ambulatory, he can at least move to some place, do few things which he'll be able to do it, like his personal things, bowel and bladder, right? So the first treatment is non-surgical, your physical therapy, and these are the ones which is the first important thing which is required. So to improve the gait, there are few things which you can give. So AFO is nothing but ankle foot orthosis, because the child, if you have noticed, they'll be having the increased tone of tendo Achilles. So these are ankle foot orthosis. So you put that so that the tone will not lead to some spasticity of the muscles. So these are ankle foot orthosis to help the child become ambulatory or mobile. And the other things which you can do is medical therapy. So there are some medicines which you can use to decrease the tone, to relieve the spasticity. Like you can use diazepam, baclofen. There is also something called as intrathecal baclofen, which will be giving into the spinal cord. So it will decrease the tone at the level of the spinal cord. Other things are Botox, Clostridium botulinum. Targeted muscles becomes weak, so there will not be much of tone in that. So it will help in your physical therapy, and the tone of the muscles will be decreased. So you've done your physiotherapy, you have done your medicines, still the tone is not decreased, or the patient has come too late where the spasticity is already developed. Then comes the surgical management. You should be very clear of the goals of surgery, and you should tell what surgery you're going to do and what are you expecting. This should be discussed with the parents. It should only be used when all your other modalities fail. You should tell that it is not a curative one, because surgery they'll always expect some cure is there, right? So you should tell them clearly it's not a curative one. Your child will be able to walk, but he'll be able to walk differently, hopefully better than how he is now, but not normal. So he'll be able to walk differently, which is better than now, but it might not be normal. Okay, so what surgeries are done are it is done to loosen joints, to decrease the muscle tightness. So it's called as tendon release surgeries. It can be for the Achilles tendon, it can be for the muscles of the hand. So these are called as tendon release surgeries. So it's a multidisciplinary type of management. So physiotherapy has to be done for the spasticity, to decrease the tone, make the child more mobile. Do some occupational therapy, speech therapy. So it is a rehabilitation one. So you want to make the child self-reliant or ambulatory at least. And most important thing is family counseling. So you should tell them it is not their fault that the child has become like this. So relieve them of the guilt. Counsel them. And also tell them your child needs your support, maybe throughout life. So you have to support your child. So if there are any organizations which are there, if they are socially not well, so refer them to some organizations where these can be done free of cost. So it's a multidisciplinary approach. So that is the reason your how you have to treat or how you have to attend a delivery, you have to take care of the mother at the time of antenatal period is so important. Because if you're not careful at that time, you'll be giving rise to a child with disabilities throughout the life, which is a hindrance or burden for the family as well as for the society. Not to mention the problems that the child is going to undergo. Right? Thank you.